Good morning. This is the third of the webinars which is being hosted by IIT Madras Alumni Association. So let me thank Zoho for allowing us to host the webinar on their platform. Thanks to Lata of IIT Madras Alumni Association for inviting me to do this, and to Rakesh and his team for doing the technology support. So I was asked to make this request. So those of you who want to, what we'll try and do is keep some time at the end today to take on questions. So day before we started with branding, as you know, we started with the picture of this great man, Philip Kotler, who said branding is marketing. This is where we started our journey 2 days ago. And we also looked at an interesting definition of branding, which some of you will remember. There is a great advantage in name that tells a story. So all about branding is about putting stories into names, and therefore they become brands. We also on the first day looked at a concept which we spent a little bit of time talking about, which is anything can be branded. You know, today everything is branded around us. Products are branded, services are branded, sports, games are branded, states are branded, cities are branded, people are branded, right? And today we did largely B2B, B2C on the first day. We did B2B on the second day. Today we're going to do what we call P2P or P2B or whatever you may call it. So today we're going to jump ship and talk about personal brand. Now, some of you here may say, look, what is a personal brand? What is this? You know, I don't believe in building my personal brand. I do my job and whatever happens, happens, right? Some of you may say, no, I'm very keen on building my personal brand. I want to do something specific with my personal brand. So today what I will do is navigate you through 3 or 4 processes for you to understand, first of all, what is a personal brand? When did this concept of personal brand start? Then how do you define your personal brand? Are there any tools which you can use for defining it, for crafting your own personal brand? And then we'll move to see how you can use social media to build your personal brand, and then look at networking. Some of you may think networking is a very, very demeaning kind of task to do, but in the world of the future, you need to learn how to network. So we'll look at networking and some new concepts on networking, and we'll end with some summary points, and then hopefully we'll have 15 minutes to take on your questions. So let me start with a video about this is a very, very famous coach, one of probably the world's biggest tennis coach, talking about what makes a champion. So this is a short video, and there are a few takeaways from this. We'll discuss that as we go along. So let me play the video.
Nick Bollettieri. Nick Bollettieri is a living legend in sport. He's a name as well known as any name in sport. He's founder of the world famous Bollettieri Tennis Academy. Nick is responsible for training more tennis champions than any other human being in the history of the sport. You all know their names: Andre Agassi, Monica Seles, Williams sisters, Anna Kournikova, Boris Becker, to name just a few, and of course, Jim Courier. So talk about our students. One comes in mind because he said an interesting remark. He said the academy and Nick provided the courts, the coaches, and the battlegrounds where our students, the best of the best, went in the back and they fought. They cheated, they fought, they punched, they connived. And out of that came the best players of the world. You can have the best facilities of the world, but you have to have passion. Passion to excel far beyond the beliefs of people. With that in mind, as I speak around the world, I will give you a brief synopsis of what I talk about. I talk about people being an athlete of life.
not an athlete on the athletic field. In order to be an athlete of life, there are 4 factors to define an athlete of life. I recently just spoke at Harvard. What are they? Number 1, to believe in yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself, no one else will. Number 2, you must surround yourself with a support system that has the same passion and belief, and that will tell you things that you don't want to hear. And without a support team, you can't do it. No individual is bigger than the sport, and I can see being here this morning very quickly that the support team is in place. 3, no matter how good you are, everybody, you must consider adjustments and sometimes making major changes. 4, the passion not to be one of the best, but to be the very best.
Nick Bollettieri. Nick Bollettieri is a living legend in sport.
Individual is bigger than the sport, and I can see being here this morning very quickly that the support team is in place. 3, no matter how good you are, everybody, you must consider adjustments and sometimes making major changes. And 4, the passion not to be one of the best, but to be the very best.
So you got that.
Nick Bollettieri.
So you got that, right? 4 things he spoke about. 1 is to believe in yourself. 2 is to have a support system which you can go to for help. 3, be ready to change. Be ready to change your positioning. And 4, have the passion to be not one of the best, but to be the very best. So what is personal branding? So here is something which I thought I'll share. Personal branding is a practice of people marketing themselves as, and for their career, or for if they are an entrepreneur, then to attract people to put money in their company. In the past, self-management books used to speak about self-improvement. The personal branding is a concept which is relatively new. And why is it important? A strong personal brand can help you do better in interviews, can hopefully get you better jobs, can get you better promotions, can get you better partnership, can of course get you better speaking engagements, and maybe a webinar or 2 as well, right? So where did this personal branding thing start? And who started this whole trend? This can be traced to an article written in 1997 by the management guru Tom Peters. Some of you would have read Peters and Collins' book In Search of Excellence. So he wrote a cover story in the magazine Fast Company, which is a magazine dedicated to the startup ecosystem. And he said, like any brand, you are a brand. And the quicker you realize it, the better it is for you. So you can either go on a default mode and say, look, my brand is something which will get built automatically, or you can say, look, I need to take control and I need to be a particular brand, and therefore I will craft this particular brand. A personal brand is actually an idea that comes to mind when people think of you. You may think you're smart, you may think you're very intelligent, you may think you're very analytical, you may think you're very humorous, but what do people think of you? People may think you crack very lousy jokes. So, you're not humorous, man, So he said, you have to understand that you are a brand and how you're crafting it. And he also said that all of us need to understand the importance of branding. Those of you who are attending the seminar for 2 days, you know how important it is for businesses, for products, for services. And we also have to realize we are CEOs of your own company. You are CEO of Me Inc. And to be in business today, one of the important jobs you do as a marketer is to market yourself and to build a brand called you. And in fact, Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, had this very nice saying, said, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And unfortunately, personal branding is very often equated to bragging. This guy keeps talking about himself. He said, what a great thing. I met so and so, I went for this party, I did this, I did. That's not personal branding. That's just bragging, and that is done by fairly obnoxious characters. And you should stay away from them, or you should put them in their place, saying, look, we know all about you. Let's tell us what you've done, not about whom you met or what a great guy you are. And another guru, this is Seth Godin, had this interesting statement saying, many of us are taught to do our best and then let the world decide how it judges us. But it is better that you decide how you want the world to judge you. So what are you? Are you just competent, or are you inspiring, passionate, obsessed, provocative, impatient, hungry, driven, adoring, inspired? What are you? How do you define? How are you going to define yourself? So there is this fairly interesting concept which is written about in a Harvard Business Review article, which came in fact, 10 years ago, saying, in order to define your personal brand, please ask yourself these 4 questions. There are a lot of people, if you're working in a company, there are probably a lot of people working around you. What differentiates you from everyone else who might have a similar education background or experience? Maybe someone who's also from another IIT. I know being from IIT Madras, you think you're from the best IIT, but there are enough guys from IIT working in your company, enough guys with 5 years of experience working in your company. So 1, what differentiates you from everyone else? 2, what skills, knowledge, abilities, attitude that I have that will make people want to work with me? Right? So people attract people. People work for people. So what do I have which will make people come and want to work with me? Because remember, in every company that you work in, there is a demand for talent, and the talent ends up going to people who are the best to work with. Okay? So that leads to, what value can I create for the others, as a friend, as a colleague, as a blogger, as a writer, right? What value can I create? Will it be known that in my company that someone who works with me ends up learning a hell of a lot? That he gets promoted, that he learns a lot of new skills. You may be a tough boss, but it's good to work under this guy because he teaches you a lot. And finally, most important, what satisfies you? You may not want to be seen as someone who is humorous, So then don't try and be humorous, right? So decide what satisfies you. And if you ask these 3-4 questions, you will figure out what kind of a brand you would want to be. Okay. And once you do that, then the next thing is to try and see if you can create your own brand mantra. Now, what is brand mantra? Brand mantra is a concept created by Professor Kevin Lane Keller, and he said all good brands can be defined with 3 words. Nike is authentic athletic performance. Nike's brand mantra is not just do it, it's authentic athletic performance. Or Disney, which is fun, family, entertainment. Or McDonald's, which is fun, family, food. So if you were to take the same concept and say, look, there are hundreds of words to describe a person, right? Adaptable, agile, agreeable, focused, fun, helpful, cheerful, analytical, diligent, etc., etc., etc. Can you think of writing your brand mantra in 2 or 3 words? For example, independently innovative, enthusiastically collaborative, strategically passionate, adaptable and agile. Construct your 3-word brand mantra, and then try and write down, I want to be known for being an enthusiastically collaborative person so that I can do this for my team. Make your brand identity real. Let it live every day for you, right? So your brand will have to be crafted by you. No one else is going to craft it for you. So what am I going to be known for? What are those three words I want to focus on, right, in what I do? So this comes really first. And you need to remember that whatever you say has to kind of satisfy four critical dimensions for personal brand. One, it is authentic. Now, if you are a very, very analytical guy, don't try and project yourself as I'm a very creative guy. It's not going to work. So one, it's authentic. Second is it is consistent. You, whatever brand position, brand mantra you want to adopt has to be consistent. You can't keep changing it every 3 months, every 6 months, right? The third is what expertise do you have to deliver that brand position? 4, what stories are you going to tell, right? And 5, how are you going to be visible? How are you going to be visible within your group, within your company, and of course outside? So this takes us to the idea of how do we use social media. A lot of young people today think that your personal brand can be built only through social media. Not necessarily true. Yes, social media can help you. You can build a very good personal brand even without, posting 3 times a day on Facebook or LinkedIn, right? Or on Twitter. You can do that without doing all that. Okay. But if you can understand social media, then probably you can build your personal brand that much quicker, that much better. So there's an interesting presentation from which I'm borrowing something like 7 or 8 concepts. So one, the first is before you start, you might have already started posting, but you can't stop. But before you start, decide what personal brand you want to build. What is the brand you want to be? Do you want to be seen as someone who is very analytical? Do you want to be seen as someone who's very creative, someone who's very fun, someone who is very, very loquacious, someone who's very interested in food? Okay, so you need to decide that. And then social media, you will have to decide between what I call 4 dimensions. What is personal, what is professional, what is private, and what is public. So you have to decide what profile you want to maintain and where you want to be public, where you want to be private. So first is personal brand. Social media comes after you decide what your personal brand is going to be. Second is, in social media, you need to showcase your personality. What is your personality? How are you going to showcase it on personal media? Will you join groups which share your passion and your experiences? Will you post stuff which you like, etc.? Step 3, personalize your posts. Even when you're sharing something which you found very interesting, add a few lines of your own. Just sharing posts makes no sense unless you are able to add your little bit on why you think this thing needs to be shared. So personalize your post, make it be you, write your point of view on whatever you share. If you write something originally, fantastic. Both, focus on one network first. It's today there are so many social media options. There is, of course, Facebook, there is LinkedIn, there is Twitter, and there is Insta, and of course WhatsApp, which is kind of killing us. Decide where you want to focus. Some very big business leaders, for example, Anand Mahindra, focus on Twitter, and his Twitter posts are largely business oriented and economics oriented. Whereas Harsh Goenka, another very respected business leader, again focus on Twitter, but he has a very light personality on Twitter. He cracks jokes. He doesn't write about business. He doesn't write about economics. He writes, fun stuff. Very different personality, right? So even those people, they know that their time is under tremendous shortage, and they've decided, look, I'm going to focus only on Twitter. Or someone may say, look, I want to focus only on Instagram, and therefore, I will share stuff which are interesting to me on Instagram. I will not go anywhere else. So focus which network you want to go, and be consistent. Be consistent in what you post. You cannot, for example, one day share a recipe for making biryani, and the next day share an article on product positioning or brand positioning. This is going to This is gonna confuse the hell out of people who are reading your posts, right? So if you're doing biryani, then the next day do pulao, and then the next day do some other Indian dish, and next day do some Chinese dish if you want. Uh, Hopefully, a Chinese dish will not involve bats, as you know, dangerous stuff. They carry a lot of viruses. So be consistent in what you do, right? Be consistent in what you do. I've got a friend of mine, ex-colleague, who's consistent. He writes largely about advertising, what he likes, what he didn't like. Right? Be consistent, and then focus on value. Look at what value are you going to give to people who are going to read your post? What do you have to offer to the audience? And then finally establish yourself as an authority. And of course, if you do all this in a systematic way, in a way which is organized and properly cataloged, you will end up becoming an authority in content marketing. And people will reach out to you to say, look, can you tell us what you think, or can you do this for us? But like I said, social media comes after the first two steps are over. The first step is, of course, understanding what is personal branding. How is your brand going to be different from all the other people around you, right? And then, of course, the next step is, how are you going to define your brand, whether it is 2 words, 3 words, 4 words. Okay, how are you going to define your brand? And when you define your brand, and Nick Bollettieri said, it's not you, but you need to talk to people around you to find out whether they believe in what you're saying, whether they believe that you can be true to this brand, or will it come as just hot air? If it comes as hot air, it's not going to work. So before, I'm saying most of you will probably already on social media, which is fine, no problem, let it be. But if you want to say, look, I want to now start building my personal brand, don't start correcting your social media posts right away. Go back to step 1, which is, what makes you different? How are you different? What value can you add to your colleagues, to your bosses, to your teams? And there, from that first step, move to the step of, how do I define my brand? I want to be seen as, critical. I want to be seen as analytical. I want to be seen as humorous. I want to be seen as creative. I want to be seen as lateral thinking, whatever it is, right? Decide on that. First step, what is your personal brand? Second, how do you define your personal brand? And then how are you going to expand the reach of your personal brand through social media? Now, another way of reaching your personal brand to a lot of people around is what I call networking. Now, networking often comes with a bit of a negative baggage. Okay, and of course, a lot of it goes back to, for example, what Dale Carnegie wrote in his book, how to win friends and influence people, about being nice and doing favors, etc., etc., etc. But when you say networking, a lot of people confuse networking with a few simple things. So let me talk about the basics of networking, which I think is often bandied around. So let's look at what are the basics. The basics of networking starts with your business card. Do you carry a business card? Do you have it ready if someone asks you for it? What is your style and clothing, right? How do you dress yourself? What kind of events are you attending? If you go to an event, whom would you want to meet? What is the plan for you? What can you say, or what should you do? If you walk to someone who's new to you, how are you going to start your dialogue? So, in fact, the American business schools focus a lot on networking skills. I'm talking of these basic networking skills, and a lot of we as Indians are extremely poor at networking, right? So it came as a revelation, and I was at Kellogg doing this conference on India. And in the evening, we were told, if you can spend a time there's a wine and cheese event. They said, look, we would like you to meet the students. So interestingly, about 7 of us were there, some from India, some from UK, and some, of course, from USA. We were all there at that lobby. And we were looking for the professors, the professor who told us, and they were missing. But instead, they were students. And these students had joined that business school probably 3 months earlier. And no one came to introduce them to us. So they had to walk up to us, introduce themselves, and start a conversation. Obviously, it was a business school, so all of them had a card. So they could walk up and say, we liked your talk in the morning, sir. This is my card. I'm so-and-so. I did engineering from that place and I worked there. I'm doing my MBA now. I may want to come back to India. What do you think? What should I do? What should I focus on, etc. So this was really cold, right? There was no one introducing them to us. They had to walk up to us, and I give that as an example that in India we don't do enough of this. And when I got talking to them, they said, look, every weekend, every Friday evening, there is a networking event like this, and where alumni come, some industry people come, and we have to go and walk up to them and talk to them, introduce ourselves and talk to them. And this is basic networking. This is not very complicated networking. So even if, for example, a simple lesson for you is, if you're going to attend a corporate event, can you walk up to someone whom you don't know from Adam, introduce yourself, and start a conversation with them? Now, it's tough. It is difficult to start with. But once you get going, okay, it's very easy. And if you want to build your personal brand, unless your personal brand is one of a recluse, then in which case you don't need to do any of this, right? Then you better be a genius, because only a recluse geniuses end up doing well in their career and their job. But otherwise, for normal human being, networking is very important. And you will have to learn how to go and talk to people and start a conversation, right? So good networkers are always ready for opportunity to meet and interact with interesting people. Remember, the more people you meet, the more chances you are finding the information that you need to do something, right? So even if the person you know or you meet in an event cannot help you, they may know someone who can help you. So as this old saying goes, how many frogs have you kissed? Because you never know, one of the frogs you kiss will turn into a prince and offer you enormous amount of wealth or whatever. So where do you meet people? You meet them in networking events, you meet them in trade shows, you also probably meet them online. So today you can reach to a lot of people online, and some of the people you reach to may actually be willing to talk to you, willing to give you advice. So you can reach people online. Okay, so and use your network. Use your network. There's no point building your network if you don't use it. So you should be able to introduce people to your network. And of course, Richard Thaler wrote this book called Misbehaving. It's on behavioral economics. So if you want someone to do a big favor for you, what do you do? So the question I normally ask in my workshops, people say, you do them a favor, you ask. So yeah, that's one option. Suppose they don't want any favor from you. What do you do? So Richard Thaler talks about this experiment, that you ask them for a small favor. And once they have agreed to give you that small favor, once you have done that small favor, then you can go and ask them for a bigger favor. So they give this little experiment they did. They went to one small town in America, and they wanted people to volunteer in the Salvation Army place where they serve food for the needy. So they wanted people to volunteer to cook food and serve food to the needy people. So they went around asking, and 2% of the people agreed to volunteer there. So they went to an identical town nearby, and they said, look, we'll try an experiment. Let's go and talk to people, saying we want to put up a little display outside your house, saying, the Salvation Army kitchen wants volunteers. Please call this number. And let's go and ask people whether they'll be willing to put it up outside their house. When they went and asked, something like 60% of the people said, oh yeah, of course, go ahead. My lawn is fine. You put up the poster there and no problem. So they put out the poster. 60% of the people agreed. So 60% of the houses had that poster. And 2 weeks later, they went back to the same people who had put out the posters and look, you put out the poster, thank you very much. Now, would you like to volunteer? What percentage of them agreed? A big number, right? Close to 25% of them said, yeah, we'd like to volunteer. So before when you go and ask people for a big favor, 2% agree. When you ask them for a small favor, 60% agree. And then later, when you ask that person for a bigger favor, out of that 60%, 25%, so 15% of them actually agree to volunteer. So this is a part of a research done by Richard Thaler. And I've had the same kind of experience, when you go and work with industry colleagues, you do get to meet very interesting people. And there's an old story of mine when I had to, one of my clients had a problem because media was going to cover this, and I called this person who I'd met and worked with him on an advertising congress, who was the CEO of this media company. The client was not even my client. I mean, we were not working with them that time, and they wanted help. So I called and said, look, something has happened. It's a small thing. It's getting blown up. So he said, no, this is a editorial matter. I may not be able to help, but let me find out. And he said, I'm taking a flight. Can I call you after 2 hours? It'll be 11 o'clock in the night. I said, yeah, please. 11 o'clock he called and said, look, I think we've handled it. There should not be a problem. Now, I would have never met him if I had not participated in an industry conclave, in an industry event. Because I participated in that, I got to know him, and then I could ask him this favor. But all this you could say is standard stuff, right? I mean, networking, going to meetings, giving out visiting cards, this is all very standard stuff. We want something more interesting from you. So here is something more interesting. So this is from an article which I read in Harvard Business Review called How to Build Your Network. So the authors have done research to find out some interesting stuff. So if you have a pen and paper in front of you, can you write down names of 5 people whom you think are part of your network? Name 5 people, part of your network. Quickly. 5 people. Okay. Now let me take you through the next step. So if you look at that 5 people, most of us will have people who are self-similar. People who are very much like us. Our batchmates, our people who studied with us and in the same institute, or people who work with us on our next desk or whatever. But some of you may have people who are diverse. You may be working in TCS, but one of your good friends is actually a copywriter in an agency. Maybe you studied with him in school, and you still stay as friends. Or some of you may be working in a pharmaceutical company, but a very good friend of yours is actually a journalist, right? So most networks, the problem is most networks we have are very self-similar and are based on proximity principle. That you work close to him, you live close to him, etc., etc. But the stronger networks are networks which are diverse. So the idea to build a diverse network is also something interesting, which is what is called a shared activity principle. So if you can build a strong diverse network, if you go beyond casual interactions in industry events and mixers, but go to shared activities, take up a passionate involvement in an activity that can help you lead to very powerful connections. So all of you know Bill Gates. Bill Gates is one of the richest people in the world and probably one of the biggest philanthropists in the world. Now, the story is that when Bill Gates had kind of dropped out of college and he was fooling around with his computer, his mom in Boston was part of a charitable organization, and United Way, I think. And in that charitable thing, she was on the board with a very senior person from IBM. And so they got, one of the meetings, they got talking, what is your son doing? La, la, la. And she said, no, he's a bright kid, but, he's fooling around the computer. He's writing something called software. So this guy from IBM said, hey, sounds interesting. Why don't you ask him to meet me? And that's where the story started, right? IBM at that time toying around with the idea of letting an outsider write the software for their IBM PC. And that's how DOS, Microsoft Disk Operating System, DOS was born. Bill Gates got his introduction to a very senior guy in IBM, thanks to his mother being part of the board of a charitable organization, right? So it's really serendipity, but this is also proves the principle of diversity and shared activity. So create your own shared activity. You got a job, you do a great job, you're part of your industry, great. But is there something else you can do where you can get to meet a very different set of people? It could be an NGO where you're volunteering one day a month. It could be a business school where you give lectures, or go to an engineering college where you give lectures and you're involved in the improvement of the education of the students in that school. Or it could be music, that you're part of a cultural circle which is into bringing, let's say, jazz music into your city, or Hindustani music, or fusion music, or Carnatic music into your city. Create another activity where you can spend probably one day a month with equally passionate people. And believe you me, you will meet a lot of interesting people. I'm not saying all of them will give you a $1 billion check like IBM gave Microsoft, but it'll open up opportunities for you. So as we saw, we started from the birth of personal branding. What is personal branding? How is it important today? Then we looked at how do you go about asking the 4 questions on what you stand for, and then defining what is your brand in 3 or 4 words. And then we went on to talk about how to use social media sensibly. And then we looked at how to use networks to build your personal brand, to build your personal connection. So with that, let me just close with some concluding remarks. So personal brand building is an ongoing process. Remember the key lessons to take away. Define what is your personal brand. How is it different from all the others around you? 2, put down demonstrable metrics for living your brand. What will you do to live your brand? If you're analytical, what are you going to do? Are you going to learn something new every time? You're working computers, therefore I will learn a new language. I will learn something new. What is it that you should not do? And what is it that you will do? Point 3, create important milestones in your personal brand journey. What worked, what did not work. And I was coaching someone and he said, look, I want to be, I know so much, etc., etc. I said, look, start writing. And it took me 3 months to get him to write his first blog post on LinkedIn, right? But 3 months later, he had written it. He was very happy, and I'm going to do this once every month. I'm going to write one short article, probably 400 words, once every month on LinkedIn. I said in the beginning, don't worry if no one reads it. Doesn't matter. Keep writing it, and people will start reading it. That's how we build your personal brand. Okay. And how do you measure your personal brand success? So we looked at Bollettieri, right? He said, look, you need to have a support system. Your support system, your mentors, they have to tell you how are you progressing on your personal brand journey. And you need to manage your personal brand, and you need to make sure that you're doing right and you're moving in the right direction. And finally, set up a review process, set up a feedback loop. You may have gone on a particular branding journey. You might find that is not working, that is not resonating with it. You're not enjoying being, very humorous. No, then change. As we say in the new world, pivot into something different, right? Change. Okay. And so let me conclude. First, everyone has a story, and therefore, you are a brand, and your story is always being told. So remember that B2B, B2C is okay. Now we're talking of P2P and P2B, right? So remember that you're a brand, and you can be a very powerful brand if you apply some of the principles I spoke to you today. I want to just share this article written by a dear friend, Harish Bhatt. where he's talked about 6 books in his column today. One is Misbehaving, which we covered a little earlier. It's about behavioral economics. He also is included in my book, Nawab Jones Noodles. He's talked about a book called Range, which is actually interest. It's about how we need to have a range of interests in order to be successful in marketing, which is something we talked about. Diversity. There's a book called Decoding the Mind, Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell, and of course his all-time favorite and mine as well, which is Swami and Friends by R.K. Lakshman. So with that, let me just show you the picture of my books. I think some of them are behind me. So those of you who have questions, can you please post them? I'll try and answer as many as I can. So starting with Srinitha Ravi, when there are 2 brands in the same category, how is one brand doing better than the other? Is mainly due to pulse of the consumer? Well, that's a simple issue, right? I mean, if there are 2 brands, and not categories have not 2, but probably 50, 60, 100 brands, and each has to therefore segment, target, position it right. Okay. Okay, this is Krishna Kumar's question. We did branding and help the world around. Okay, I think this is a B2B question, which I think we addressed yesterday. Krishna Kumar says he used a very big international consultant, but they didn't see any business results. So please remember, just changing the logo, changing the packaging is not going to work. Branding is not that. Branding is a lot more. It's a lot tougher. It would probably involve change in processes, change in a lot of things. So unless you do that, Mr. Krishna Kumar, branding, you can't just put a new paint on your products and think it will go well. So rebranding projects have to be think through from bottom up. Okay, Tanika Chalam. It's building an institutional brand is very different from building a personal brand. Personal brand is you. What are you as a brand? And you asked also a question: who kills the personal brand? You will kill the personal brand yourself, right? It's up to you. You can build it. You can kill it. Okay. When a brand is B2B focused, Manisha, how much impact does communication to consumers impact when the product is majorly? Just because a product is B2B focused doesn't mean that there is no need for marketing communication. Marketing communication needed for both B2B and B2C. You cannot assume that just because I'm B2B, marketing communication is not needed at all. So you need it for both, right? Yeah, Anil Balan has asked a good question, which is, does personal branding help? I think personal branding helps founders of startups immensely. Okay, you need to figure out what is your personal brand, how are you going to build it. It starts with your own personal appearance, your impression. What impression do you want to give? What kind of profile do you want to maintain on various platforms? Where are you going to participate? Because I do mentor a company which I read today that they're partnering with Mahindra to make some machines. Now, they were struggling for almost a year before they could get a big breakthrough in terms of who is going to fund their company, right? And the angels had put in some small money, but that was small. But they did it by constantly building their personal brand and by participating in every event meant for startups. And then finally they met someone who turned out to be a great mentor, who gave them great advice, and that changed the whole direction. Okay. Of course, Ashish Kumar, yes, personality is important. Your personal brand cannot be divergent from your personality. If you're a very gregarious and a very friendly kind of person, that's your personality. Your personal brand has to reflect that. It cannot diverge it. Madhavan's question is good. He says, in a team game, even in a team game, personal branding is important. What is your brand? In that team, there may be 5, 6, 8 people. Each person has his own individual brand. How is your brand different, better? What value are you going to add to the team? Biren Vora has asked, how do you reconcile personal branding to Indian context of karmanyeva adhikarasya, and look inside. Of course, that's why, personal branding is not about bragging. Please don't get it wrong. Personal branding is not just going on talking about, I did this and I did that. That's wrong. That's not personal branding. Okay. Personal branding is about figuring out what you want to do, what are you good at, and then projecting it to the right target audience. Shashank Dudaya, while pivoting B2B business and personal career to say change in current brand or create. Well, okay. So Shashank has asked an interesting question. Your brand is, if you're in a particular job and probably in a senior position, the senior position gives you a brand aura, right? And then if you change your job, you may have to correct your brand imagery. I moved from advertising to marketing to a British multinational. So I had to change a significant part of my personal brand identity, how I looked, how I dressed, how I talked. All that had to change because I moved jobs. So you will have to course correct your brand depending on your job profile, what are you doing, what is doing right, what is working well, right? And you have to, so if you're in a job, you go into a startup, your profile is going to change, your personal brand is going to change. Okay. Okay, this is Sanyam Jain has asked a very, very good question, which is, can a post, can a post in LinkedIn be harmful to you in your career? Yes, definitely. Okay, so which is why good companies have what is called a social media policy, and they make you sign that policy. And in that policy, they say you can't reveal any company secrets. You can't go to social media and criticize anything which is happening inside the company, which is not in public domain. And you can't criticize our clients or our customers are paying us money, etc., etc., etc. So the companies are, and some companies even monitor, what you do from the office computer, and they can monitor that, right? And there is a big question: are they allowed to monitor? Is it right to monitor? I believe if you're sitting in the company's office from 9 to 5, and you're sitting with the company's computer, you're sitting on the company's bandwidth, then the company has the right to monitor what you're doing. Okay, but if you're posting something negative to what your company is doing, just make sure you do it from outside, and make sure you do it on a personal ID, not on your professional ID. And also, please remember, if you're criticizing your company, why are you working there, right? So that's a bigger question. Okay, so companies are clear today that the social media is a dangerous animal, and sometimes well-meaning employees. I'm not saying, someone may go and actually post a photograph of a new product which is still under development, so you therefore revealed it to the market. So please understand, before you start posting anything about your company in social media, please understand what is the social media policy of your company, and please abide by that. Okay, good. Ashish is asking too many questions, so I'm going to skip that. Okay, DF team is saying that I'm a middle-aged. If you're a middle-aged person, you can build your personal brand whenever. You can build your personal brand at the age of. I talked about Harsh Goenka. Harsh Goenka started tweeting 22 years ago. He had no presence on Twitter, right? And he started tweeting. So you can do this whenever you want. There's no, and if your career is progressing perfectly fine, you don't want to be on social media, please don't be on social media. So here is something which I need to tell to people about social media. Okay, one is, you can be completely out of social. You don't need to be on social media. And nowadays I'm convinced that being on WhatsApp is a crime, is completely madness. Okay, you don't need to be on social media. But if you're a company, and if you're marketing any product or service, your company has to monitor what is happening on social media continuously. Because a lot of customers may be complaining on social media. A lot of customers may be praising you on social media, both of which you should know, both of which you should address. If someone has praised you, put up a video saying, this is how I use this mixie, and I really love the way it worked. Company should thank him, saying thank you very much, because he's praising your company. So remember, social media as a company, you have to monitor what is happening on social media. Okay, Umesh has asked a question. And as an Indian living abroad, he says, yeah, it is true. Indians are not very good at networking. We are often worried about, making mistakes and seen in bad light. And also style and clothing. See, Indian style and clothing is changing as we speak. The fact that a lot of business schools are training their executives, their students, to how to dress better, how to talk better. So some business schools are even offering what is called business etiquette. How do you start a conversation? How do you? So all this is happening, and I think probably in the next 5 to 10 years, Indians will come out of this shell. Let's be clear, we are different as a society. So there are socio-cultural norms which are kind of ingrained in them. We cannot break out of it very easily. So are the Chinese. They are socio-cultural norms. Or so are the Latinos. They're very different. They're very, very loquacious. They hug you and stuff like that. We don't do that, right? So we are different, and I think we need to learn how to be more quote unquote global in how we behave, especially those of us who deal in international clients and international colleagues. Like for example, how do we write an email? A lot of people have the caps lock on and they type, and it's all it. They don't realize when you have the caps lock on, it's equivalent to shouting, right? You're not supposed to do that. Can personal branding, okay, Shashank Tripathi again. Shashank, can personal branding make good use of creation, story, journey? So far as absolutely, personal branding can help your brand if you work for a particular brand. Like I spoke about Anand Mahindra, he's used his personal brand to push all his products, whether it is his automobiles, his new Java motorcycle, or his Club Mahindra. So it's a great way. It's free media. So he posts, a lot of times someone sitting on a Mahindra tractor takes a photograph and says, Anand Mahindra ji, I'm so delighted with the new tractor. Thank you very much. And he retweets it saying, great to know that you're satisfied with my tractor, Tripathi ji. Okay. So Gopi Nayagam wants free advice on engineering sustainable energy. Sorry, sir, I'm not qualified. I don't know. What is the difference between joining a training club versus joining numbers in a race? Not sure what that means. Is personal brand mantra based on actual present status or wishful? Okay. Kushal, good question. A personal brand mantra has to be somewhat rooted in reality, but should be forward thinking as well. So personal brand mantra is what you want to be, but it cannot be totally different from what you are. So it is somewhere, I would say, a bridge between where you are and where you want to go. So some people have asked for the PPT of the first day. I've shared it with the Alumni Association. You should brand building, image building are the same. They are somewhat same, but also not the same thing. Anand Mahindra Group is a good question, but I think we are now close to running out of time. Bhaskar and Krishnamurti asked, don't you think adding Swami and friends in his list reduces his branding as a branding? Absolutely not. I think that is his personality. The fact that he added Swami and friends to the list of 6 books to read during the break, and he's saying something interesting. He's saying, look, as a marketing professional, should you only read marketing books, or should you read books which are somewhat different? Swami and Friends is such a wonderful slice of Indian life. And you learn so much by reading fiction. So I totally Swami and Friends is my all-time favorite. I totally endorse what he's. Okay, writing books, does it boost a personal profile? Of course, it will. You'll have to first find a publisher, and then it will help you. Yeah. People have asked for presentation copies. This is something. Okay, good. So, how do you become, if you're an introvert, you are tongue tied, you need to figure out how to. So, the easiest thing for you to do is to start speaking at forums which are very, very less threatening. And I give this advice to some of my coaches saying, look, before you want to go and speak at a CII summit or a NASCOM summit, you know, which is full of, say, 2,000 people, highly qualified people, it's a scary thought, right? So don't start there. Go to an engineering college or go to a business school and take a guest session. Prepare well. Prepare your topic, prepare your PPT, prepare well. But go and talk to the students. And if you start talking to students, it will give you confidence, Vigneshwaran, and slowly you will develop the ability to talk to bigger forums. Okay, Santosh has asked, you meet someone at a forum. I think it's perfectly okay. Please be aware that you meet someone at a forum, you take his business card, and then you say, oh, if I write to him, he'll get upset. If he gave you his business card, he's okay. You can mail him. What will happen? The worst, he will not reply, which is fine. Which is, loss of 5 minutes of your time. How to rebuild your brand? That is a long question. Samir Mehta, yes, you need a personal CRM. You need to decide how are you going to maintain contact. Now is the right time. I think I spoke about it yesterday. Now is the right time. You keep your network active. Now is the right time. So I think we are now running out of time. Anvita, sorry, I don't know whether I can answer that. B2B, B2C, it's a complicated question. Pooja Venkat, it's perfectly okay to use social media. All I'm saying is at worst, they will not reply, which is fine. Vishal Sharma, good question. Personal branding is different, more important in some industries. For example, in service industries, B2B service industries, personal brand is extremely important. For retail, may not be that important. Okay, so I think we run out of time. So let me just close by thanking IIT Madras Alumni Association for hosting this seminar, and I thank you for your patient listening and a lot of very, very good questions and very, very interesting questions. I apologize, I've not been able to answer all of them because of the paucity of time. Let me once again thank you. Please stay safe. Please keep your network alive. Please keep talking to friends and contacts, and use the lockdown to become a better personal brand. So thank you very much, and have a nice day, a safe day. Thank you.